First speaker in the history of the Kyiv Youth Forum.
The art of debate slowly dies out in the midst of conformity and convenience. Ladies and gentlemen, please prepare to enter a battlefield of ideas as our next speaker likes to call upon the debate stage. This time, however, his main opponent is himself as he delves into the roots of political pathos, the emergence of populism, and the consequences of ignorance in today's world. Please welcome Raman Narula.
When I was 11, the Euromaidan crisis erupted in Ukraine. It became the central subject of discussion everywhere, at home, at school, and on the internet. Being a curious middle schooler, I tried to comprehend as much as I could. My friends and I later would share our findings in the cafeteria, which marked the start of our political debates. It was there that I discovered what different reactions, different opinions may evoke. Seeing tears, hearing screams and insults made me want to drop the subject altogether. I decided it was not worth trading friendship for debate. As the years passed and the conflict seemingly forgotten, I continued to pursue my personal passion for debate by joining the speech and debate team at school. At first, it had seemed like a sanctuary, where those who share my interest and I would be able to explore new ideas. First impressions, however, could be deceiving. I quickly found out that in order to succeed, the presentation must be the top priority. The arguments themselves did not seem to matter, which puzzled me. Every year, hours of case building and research would be negated solely by how well arguments were made to sound. I was saddened to see debate in such a state. Now, what do these two anecdotes have in common? In both cases, we see that the emotional aspect of things got the better of rationale. Now, the most important question is, why is this important? Why should we care? The consequences of this can be seen on a mass scale in present-day politics. The twin events of 2016, namely Trump's victory in the Brexit referendum, has marked the rise of populism. Populism is a type of politics that appeals to the masses, often posing them against a select group of elite. What's even more dangerous is the manner in which populists solicit their voters, stirring up hatred, anger, and most dangerously, exploiting our fear, turns democracy into an emotional puppet show. Now, our opposition to populism has been quite weak. For instance, mainstream parties, rather than fighting populism on its merits, fighting it in the battlefield of ideas, fighting it through civil debate, have rather adopted the very same tactics populists themselves use. By personally attacking the populists, mainstream parties have polarized politics more than ever. Observing politics in modern day brings me back to the times of the playground, where the biggest bully and his mob would often get his way. Personally, I find it ironic that in the age of information and technology, with data available at our fingertips, we choose to turn the other cheek. Sure, we can listen, but we do not actually hear what we are saying. The inability of our politicians, and by extension of us, to find a common ground has become a real problem, and it is slowing down the progress of humanity as we speak. Now, why do we cling on to our opinions emotionally when they are, in fact, subject to change? The answer is confirmation bias. According to Ray Nickerson, a psychology professor at Tufts University, confirmation bias is a psychological phenomenon that creates a tendency for us to case build. We do not interpret information lucidly. Rather, we handpick it in order to build up our case. In simpler terms, if you heard something nasty about your rival, you would jump to the conclusion that it is true. If you heard the same thing about your best friend, you would discard it as a vicious rumor. As you can see, this sort of bias occurs because we have a motivation. We have a motivation to see our rival as negative, and we have a motivation to see our best friend as positive. Hence, confirmation bias is often called motivational bias. Now, how do we overcome our biases? To explain this, I must provide an analogy. So let us model a situation in where we have two people debating a controversial issue. Now, these people have diametrically opposing views. You sit them down for a debate, and things go ballistic. You hear screams, tears, insults being thrown, both sides refusing to give in and clinging on to their opinion. After the debate is over, no consensus is achieved, and the two people do not want to debate again. So, what is the solution? I'd like to draw a parallel to horror films. Horror films are scary because they contain the unknown. When we first watch them, we're frightened by the anticipation. Suspense gradually builds up until a jump scare has us jumping out of our seats. Now, if you watch the said movie a second time, the same reaction will persist, albeit to a lesser extent. Then you watch it for a third time, and then the fourth, and gradually, a film we once deemed scary will not be scary at all. The same solution can apply in our scenario. If you sit down the two people to debate a second time, and then a third, and then a fourth, and so on and so forth, gradually they'll get accustomed to the opposing viewpoint. It will not be a mystery for them. It will not be anything new. And by removing emotion out of the equation, they can sit down and have a productive debate solely based on the facts. Now, another type of bias that inhibits our ability to sit down and have discourse is called cognitive bias. Now, cognitive bias occurs due to the biological limitations of our brain. We cannot always imagine the opposing viewpoint. Sometimes our imagination simply does not have the capabilities to do so. So, what do? A Princeton University study was conducted to research the effects of cognitive bias. In the study, a team of researchers invited subjects who had strong views either for or against the death penalty. The researchers gave them to analyze evidence, both for and against the death penalty. Whilst giving them the information, the researchers requested the subjects to be as impartial and objective as possible. During the period of analysis, the researchers seemed unfazed by the prevalent evidence. In fact, even when confronted evidence suggesting the contrary, the subjects retained their own opinion. In fact, even more strongly. Puzzled by this, the researchers opted for a different method. In the second trial, when giving out the evidence, the researchers actually gave the subjects a method for analyzing it. The researchers instructed the subjects to consider the opposite strategy. In simpler terms, the subjects were asked to evaluate the evidence as if they held the opposite opinion. The results were staggering. People were able to discover for themselves information they had previously overlooked. In fact, several of the subjects were even able to change their opinion. So, what conclusion can we draw for this? In order to overcome our cognitive biases, we simply need to devise a method, a personal, unique method, to interpret information lucidly. This is also prevalent in school. There are different types of students. Some people are visual learners, some learn by listening, and some require a hands-on experience in order to learn. Debate is an art. It requires time, persistence, commitment, and effort to truly master. But it is necessary that we do so. As seen in the modern world, with our politics right now in shambles, in order to enact change, it must start with us. Each and every one of us must learn to master the skill. It is vital that we do so if we want to keep our democracy afloat and running. Given today's solutions and the methods that I have prescribed, I think it is important to go back and truly look back on our ability to articulate and, most importantly, to listen. Now, before I go, I want to leave you all with a question. What will the world of tomorrow look like? In a time where global cooperation is needed more than ever, in a time where the burden of humanity's problems will be shared by everyone and not a specific nation alone, we require this skill more than ever. I truly hope my generation will bring capable politicians who are, first and foremost, capable debaters, so that we can all enjoy a world with tranquility, stability, and most importantly, with progress. Thank you.